Okay, so as you may know, I've started lawn mower repair hobby. I'm still calling it a hobby. It's not actually a business. We live off grid and we're a minimalist, so I don't have a lot of tools, didn't have a lot of tools to start a business. Now, years ago, I had a ton of tools, but as divorces go and you move, you end up selling them or losing them, and we became nomads and I sold most everything. So I'm kind of rebuilding my tool set so we can actually do this lawnmower repair business. So I thought I'd go through some of the minimalistic off-grid tools that you may need, want if you wanted to start some sort of mechanical business. I haven't really spent that much money on tools. A lot of people think you got to have a big, huge toolbox and tool set. So what I started out with was this Walmart set of ratchets and sockets. There's a few wrenches in here. You got some metrics, just your common stuff. 10mm on metric is probably the most used, and then you have your standard. And this was like 60, it might have been 80, 60, $80, somewhere around there. You don't use the Allen wrenches very often, but the sockets, especially the 1/4-inch drive, you'll use a ton. And this is kind of a nice set. It's got some extensions. Got the long extension for the 1/4 and a long extension for the 3/8 drive. Now, just in case you didn't know, there's typically 3 ratchet sizes. You got your 1/4, 3/8, and half. I don't have a half, don't need it. I'm not a diesel mechanic or even a car mechanic, so this suits me really well for small engine repair. When you get into it, you'll quickly realize you got to have these wrenches. These wrenches, really, I have all these wrenches. I have a set that I kind of drug around with me as a nomad, and it has these wrenches, but these are a little bit unique. These are really handy if you're going to take off the shroud on a riding mower. Specifically, I think it's the 1/2 inch, and it's a ratcheting wrench. You might be able to hear the ratchet, and so that way you don't have to take that wrench off every time and try to line it back up to the bolt. And when you're in a tight space, it's really easy to stick your finger on this and just ratchet. Works great. Again, I don't have a large set. I didn't buy the metric. I've needed a metric one time, but I've needed that 1/2 inch a gazillion times. And again, you don't have to have fancy. I bought that off of Amazon probably for, I don't know, 15 bucks. Wasn't expensive at all. And so while we're still talking about ratcheting and sockets, occasionally, not very often, but occasionally, you're going to need a universal. So you can get into that little nook and cranny spot. This is a 1/2 inch, there's a 1/4. Get in that little nook and cranny spot. The only time I've ever really needed this was to use it on a starter. Trying to get to a starter, I didn't have them at the time, so I decided to go ahead and get a set. And again, not very expensive. You buy them off Amazon. Now, I know everybody seems to think you got to have the fanciest tools, the snap-ons. I used to have Craftsman. I don't know if Craftsman is still a big deal or not now that they've got away from Sears. What we see here is a needle nose vice grip. I have a regular pair of vice grips, but these are handy a lot to grab onto a bolt that won't turn, or if you want to shut off the fuel. You know, you want to clamp the fuel line so gas doesn't leak everywhere. I use these quite a bit. I wish I had a smaller pair. Now, I already had these. These are little files for torch cleaning tips. This is handy if you want to clean a carburetor. Comes in different sizes, and those little carburetor ports are pretty small. So you can use these to kind of file it down. I don't know if you can see the filing action on it. The thing is, it took me forever to get these. It came from China, and it must have got lost in shipment. During the time, I bought a carburetor, and it came with the set. So, and this one has some larger brushes. Now, I had screwdrivers, and I know everybody's going to think, well, why are you showing us screwdrivers? Yeah, everybody's got screwdrivers. Carolyn just bought me these. She was being nice, and I've used them actually quite a bit. I didn't realize my screwdriver, Phillips, was kind of stripped out. Now, while we're talking about screwdrivers, I'm going to bring you back over here. This set has sockets that attach to a driver. And that has been real handy. I use this probably more than the ratchet itself. This is really handy. It also keeps you from over tightening things. When you're working on a weed eater's carburetor, you use this and you can only get it hand tight. But with the ratchet, you can put a lot of force on that and you might end up stripping it out. Those weed eater carburetor screws are pretty weak. Also, make sure your set comes in with a Torx head bit, because most lawnmowers, that's all that is anymore, is Torx bits. So if you get yourself a set, yeah, it goes right into that screwdriver. I broke one. I'm going to have to replace it. Is the T10. Honda used that for their valves, and I just barely turned it and it broke, so I'm going to have to get a new one. So it tells you how little torque these things need. If you can break a bit by hand, and I'm not a big guy, they don't need a lot of torque on those weed eaters. Now, while I'm talking about Torx, I have this. I've always had this. I had this years ago. Worked on an old car. I can't even remember the name of the car anymore. And the one you're going to want out of this is another Torx screw. This goes on your ratchet, the 3/8 ratchet. You're going to want this for your exhaust, to take the exhaust pipe off the engine. Got to have that. So again, it's a 1/4 inch. I fortunately had it in a set. If you decide that you're going to take a engine off, or the exhaust off, or do a head valve or a head gasket change, you got to have that 1/4. Might be easier to just get the set though. Another tool I had, but got to have for lawnmowers too, I had this for my truck. This is an oil filter wrench, but it fits the lawnmower oil filter as well. A torque wrench. Again, I didn't spend a lot of money on this, maybe 20 bucks. It wasn't a lot. And it's in inch pounds, not foot pounds. Now you can get on your computer on Google and you can say what inch pounds is so-and-so foot pounds, and you can and it'll calculate it for you. And it's a simple adjustment. Right here is the numbers, and you just kind of turn it until you get it to the number you want. I use this primarily, well, I've showed you once I've used it for a spark plug. You can use it on a spark plug, but I've used it primarily for head valve, or head bolts, excuse me, head bolts. Most everything on the lawnmower doesn't require exact torques, but head bolts do, and you need to Google up your specific make of lawnmower. If you're ever going to change out your head gasket or do a valve seal, you got to take the head off. You're going to need this, and you're going to torque it to 3 different levels. So don't remember the numbers, but let's say it's 72 inch pounds, 144 inch pounds, and I think it's 220 inch pounds. And so you go around once at the 72, you go around again at 140, and go around again. And there's an actual sequence, so you have to draw out the sequence and find the sequence also. So again, not very expensive, but it is a necessary tool, unfortunately. Now in the wintertime, I'm going to take that inside so it's not exposed to the cold. These, I know what these are called. I'm not going to tell you what they're called because I'm pretty sure YouTube will demonetize me, so I call them fancy doctor scissors. And you're going to need these to work on weed eaters and chainsaws. Anytime you got a hose in the gas tank, you got to be able to reach down there and grab it so you can take the filter, the fuel filter off. Also, if you need to replace the fuel line, you can grab it and pull it through that hole. I just made a video on that, or I will be making a video on that. I think I will be. I think I'm in the process of making that video. I'm showing you how to put in a new fuel line. A compression tester. So there's 3 things that can go wrong with your lawnmower. You either have compression issue, fuel issue, or spark issue. And really, there's only a few ways to figure out if you got a compression issue. But accurately, a compression tester is going to be the most accurate. So you take this hose and you screw it into the spark plug hole. Now there's different sizes spark plugs, so it comes with different size fittings. Screw it in there. You don't have to screw it tight, just hand tight. You'll pull the engine rope 4 or 5 times, and you'll watch the compression come up. It should be about 150, 125, somewhere around there. You get below 75 and you're not going to be able to run. I gotta tell you, if your pistons and cylinder is messed up. These are little sockets, and these come with the carburetors. I didn't buy these. These came with carburetors that I bought for the weed eaters and chainsaws. And this is to adjust your carburetor. There's a hollow hole in there, and you can stick that into there and adjust your high and lows on your carburetor. This is a valuable tool. Your feeler gauges, because you're going to use the 10,000s to set the ignition coil. You got to have 10,000s in between the ignition coil and the flywheel. You're going to use well, just a variety of them. You're going to use it for spark plugs and for valve adjustments. And with modern day mowers, you got to have valve adjustments, I think every 100 hours. So basically once a season. So you can do that yourself. It's not hard to do. I've showed it many times. But you got to have these in order to do it. Again, not very expensive. And then we're going to come up to this. I've been asked this question several times. Why do I have two? I mean, I just bought this one. But why do I have two impact wrench? This one I bought as a set a few years ago when I was building a tiny house. It came with a drill and this little impact wrench. I don't know what it's actually called. It's not an actual impact wrench, but it works like an impact wrench. You know, makes that impactful sound. But what this was for is to screw in wood screws. Comes with a little bit, you can torx bit, and you can screw in the wood screws. And I used the heck out of it to build a tiny house. All you had to do was buy these extensions here off Amazon, and it turns it into an impact wrench. So I use this all the time for the 1/4 inch drive. You get much bigger than the 1/4 inch drive, so the 1/4 inch, and then you got the 3/8. You get much bigger than that, this thing doesn't do very well. This is 90 foot-pounds. Now you can buy a DeWalt, which is 1,000 foot-pounds, and if you're a diesel mechanic, that might be important to you. But as a lawnmower mechanic, 1,000 foot-pounds is too much torque for anything. The nice thing with this is it's so little torque that I can actually screw things back in using this. And if I mess up and get it too tight, this thing isn't going to over tighten it. I wouldn't use it on a weed eater, but on the lawnmowers, this works fine. That being said, there are occasions I need a more powerful one. So I bought this Walmart Hyper Tough. It was $50 or $60, and it comes in a 1/2 inch drive, so bigger than my 3/4 or 3/8, excuse me. So you had to buy a reducer. Now I can use 3/8. I could also, if needed, I can use it with 1/4 inch, because I bought a whole set of these, so I could reduce it down again and use 1/4. But since I have the other impact in, it's a lot less dangerous to use on these smaller bolts. I just use the weaker one. If you're really needing to buy one though, and you don't want to buy two like I did, buy this one, because this one will take care of everything. But you got to be extremely cautious that you don't tighten your bolts with this, because it will over tighten, especially the 1/4 inch. This is going to be handy taking off mower blades. You get into those bigger bolts, knocks them right off. This will actually remove your lug nuts off your car. I've read the reviews. A lot of people said they work on their cars with this. This is 330 foot-pounds. So this is 90. This is 330. And the DeWalts and the Kias and all that, they're 1,000. Again, that's good for diesel engine work. Not really sure you need it for lawnmowers. And as far as regular day-to-day use, that's all you really need, the 90. But to get off your spindles on the mower deck and the blades, this is handy. I'm glad I got it. And then we're going to move on to my most recent purchase, and that's the pressure washer. Now, the first thing people said, and I knew they would say it almost instantly, that's not very powerful. It's 1,600 pounds. You can get a gas engine one that's 3,000 psi. Well, there's several reasons why we got this one. It's a Walmart one. It's Hyper Tough. It was pretty cheap. I think it was like $100. But we have solar panels, and this I can run on solar panels. The other thing is this is 1.2 gallons a minute. That means my IBC tank, a little RV pump, can keep up with this. The one thing that I would have never bought that has been the most handy is the jack, the lawnmower jack. Somebody gave this to me. It's like a $300 tool. So you can just pull your lawnmower up onto the pads here, strap them down, and then you just twist it up. And it takes all of 30 seconds to get your lawnmower up, and you're working on it. That's my tool set. So if you'll click this up next box, it'll take you to a video where I was working on something. So I hope I can inspire you to buy some tools, I guess, so you can live your dreams. Thanks for watching.